Welcome to Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here is the podcast host, James Delingpole.
Welcome to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special, exciting and different guest, a representative from Generation Z, Zuzanna Mroz. Is that how I pronounce it? Mroz?
Yeah, it's Mroz. Mm-hmm.
Mroz. And it's Polish.
That's right. So the O actually is supposed to be read as a U, but since there is no line on top of it in English, then it's just Mroz.
It doesn't sound Polish though. It looks more like Czech or something.
Well, it means frost. Perhaps it's very similar in Czech as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But it's quite a common name.
So you are actually Polish, even though you don't sound Polish. You've got a kind of slightly American accent.
I went to an American school, so I think that's why.
So that's where you learned your bad English.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's bad if you're in England. And you're studying at. How old are you, by the way?
19.
19. Okay. And you're studying at, of all places, because I mean we're about to reveal what your politics are in a moment. You're studying at the London School of Economics. And by the way, I'm always really excited to talk to your generation, because I think that if there's any hope for the future, it is Generation Z, Generation Z. I don't know why it is. You can maybe tell me more about that. But so you came over from Poland, and you decided that you were going to study at an English university, and you ended up studying at one of the most left-wing universities in the entire country. Did you not?
I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I could have been studying at SOAS. In fact, yesterday I went with my friend Ashton Whitty. We went to SOAS, and it was really funny because there were Antifa stickers all over the place and Marxist posters, but then you would have a Lamborghini, like right opposite.
What,
so
belonging to a SOAS student?
Yeah, or a professor, because it was right inside the campus. So
you're not serious?
I'm serious. I have a video.
No, I don't doubt that you saw the car. What I'm questioning is whether a SOAS professor. That's, by the way, the School of Oriental and African Studies, for people who haven't been exposed to this horror. Was Tariq Ali at SOAS? No, you wouldn't know him. He's a kind of figure from the 60s. I mean, that's the thing. We are repeating all this stuff all over again. I think we are reliving 1968 now. What's happening on our campuses? This kind of absolute peak lunacy. What are you studying, by the way?
Law.
Oh, okay. Right. And was it easy to get your place? I mean, is it quite academically demanding?
Well, yes, certainly it is. There is a lot of work, but I try to enjoy it as much as possible. I want to be a journalist, so it does come in handy. Stupid fool. So it does come in handy, especially in regards to what I can say, what I can't say, the sort of laws that guide freedom of speech in this country. So I think that it is quite useful in this business.
Or rather, what's left of freedom of speech.
Oh, rather, what's left of freedom of speech.
Yeah. So you think, because it's interesting, most people sort of don't study law in order to become lawyers because they know they're going to be studying for the rest of their life, and you're doing the opposite. You're studying law knowing that you don't want to do law. And I mean, okay, so what? You're Polish, and when I was growing up, Poland was behind the Iron Curtain. I think it was run by a guy called Jaruzelski, was it?
Yeah.
And it was a grim place with sort of heavy industry and probably lots of pollution and no freedom of speech. But now, I suspect that it's probably on the freedom scale, probably freer than it is over here in the UK, or not?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there are some laws that have been passed recently, like for example, you're not allowed to say Polish concentration camps anymore. That's illegal. Which I think, although that is true, they weren't Polish, they were German concentration camps in Poland.
Yeah.
I still think that if you have the argument that they weren't Polish, then defend your argument. And I don't think that putting a restriction on this expression is going to be effective in any way. But regardless of that, yes, I would say that Poland is a lot freer now, because I think that since it was a communist country, it was the nationalists and the patriots who took the long-term path of changing the country. So they started to engage in public institutions and universities and teach there and sort of raise this new generation of people who love their country, whereas in the West it was more the communists and socialists who did the same. And so now you see that it's university professors who are organizing all these Antifa events, and communism and socialism is strongest at these institutions that should be promoting a larger diversity of thought.
I'm with you. So I suppose I don't know much about the Polish Revolution apart from, well, Lech Walesa.
Yeah.
But he was a dock worker, wasn't he? Or he worked in the shipyards.
Yes, he was. Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't an academic. I'm just thinking of the kind of the reverse parallels. I know that the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia was launched by academics, wasn't it? I mean, Václav Havel was a poet, I think.
I don't know so much about the Czech Revolution, but I know that they still hold a grudge against, a lot of Czechs still hold a grudge against Poland for disturbing that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did Poland do?
Are you talking about 1968?
Well, I'm talking about whatever. Yeah. 68, yes?
Yes, so
that was the Velvet Revolution.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what happened is that the Czechs started to oppose the communist regimes, and then the Polish tanks entered to disturb
that. Oh, they were Polish tanks?
Yeah, they were Polish tanks. Thing is, it was directed by Russia, so if Poland didn't have a choice.
Right, yes.
But yeah, a lot of Czechs for many, many years held a grudge against that action, but now we know that that wasn't the case. That it wasn't the Polish military, or it was the Polish military under the Russian Soviet directions.
What I'm trying to develop is the point you make about this interesting reverse position, whereby in the West, true to the lines of Antonio Gramsci, the Long March Through the Institutions, the left took over the universities, the schools, the Hollywood, the BBC, etc., etc. But you're saying that in the Eastern Bloc it was the other way around, that the people like us, as it were, they were the people fighting the fight from within the universities. So what's happening now then?
Well, I think that this is the time for Poland to shine in a lot of ways, and I think that the pride in heritage and culture and our achievements and history is really at a rise, and I think that a lot of people are very proud of being Polish, whereas I think in the West it's more, oh, I should be ashamed, so much white guilt and so much shame for their heritage and achievements of their forefathers, which I think is really very upsetting.
I certainly don't get there's much of a guilt vibe going on in Poland, except with the possible exception of that, the Poles' complicity in the Holocaust, which let's face it, the Poles are quite anti-Semitic. I mean, they certainly were during the war. I don't think they were that unhappy about the Jews being killed, even if they weren't directly responsible for it themselves. Do you think that's a fair point? I
mean, historically, that is a very questionable point, because throughout the Middle Ages, Poland was one of the very few countries who would accept Jewish refugees, and there was always a very large Jewish population in Poland, especially Krakow. Like, bagels, for example, that are so popular in the West now, they were actually a Polish Jewish invention.
Right.
So I think that...
What, the Poles invented the bagel?
Jewish Poles, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that there is a very strong connection between Jewish and Polish heritage in a lot of ways. I don't think that necessarily making the point that Poles are inherently anti-Semitic is fair.
Okay. Well, you look, stand up for your own people. I'm just on a mission to find out. But going back to my point, generally I think the Poles are... We had a Polish MP on the other week. Very proud of their country, and rightly so. I like Poles, and I like Poland. I'm a Delingpole after all. But you think about, where did President Trump go to make his brilliant speech, defending Western civilization? He went to Warsaw. And how was the reception for that speech?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, people were so involved that local communities that were far away from Warsaw in the east and west, they were organizing buses to go, and so that people can cheer for Trump. Oh, yeah. Poles are very passionate about America and Donald Trump.
Yeah, because he gets it, doesn't he? He gets the struggle.
Gets it.
Absolutely. Were you there?
No, I wasn't. I was in Copenhagen at the time.
You missed the trick there.
I missed the trick,
Because I know you do. You're quite an increasing presence on YouTube and Twitter and stuff. You really get about. I mean, you've got one of the qualities I think that's needed to survive in this new journalistic world, where there isn't a guaranteed job at a newspaper anymore. You've really got to push for it. And I notice you are quite pushy in a good way.
Well, I try to be. I mean, I think it's a very competitive market, and I enjoy that aspect of competition. But I also think that I've been quite lucky with the people I've met and people who want to support me and help me out and see some potential in me. So I think that a lot of this is a mix of talent and luck and everything in between.
Right. Okay. So the Polish. I'm just filling in a few gaps here left over from my last interview with a Pole. I always like a bit of guidance on the current regime in Poland. Good thing or a bad thing? I know they're quite conservative, but the EU, which I don't trust, is characterising them as kind of really extreme conservative. Are they?
So there is a huge discrepancy between the word conservative in the East and West.
Right.
Here, I would call myself a hardcore conservative, probably for Western standards, and I think so would you,
right.
In a lot of regards. But then in Poland, both of us would be rather left-wing.
Oh, really?
Yes, I would certainly say so.
I like that idea. A place in the world where I'm considered dangerously left-wing.
Oh yes, certainly, and it is a very difficult question to consider, because on one hand I do sincerely support the opposition to the European Union. I think the EU has become a very left-wing institution and a super parliament that is very undemocratic, that I completely distrust, and I think that the government does a lot of good for the country. I also think that they've been very successful at increasing birth rates, but there are some issues, like for example, it is very difficult to be a member of the LGBT community currently, and there is that. I think
that's true, isn't it? The Poles are not very good on gays and stuff, are they?
A lot in a lot of communities that can be difficult. So I think loads of people move to larger cities where they can find that sort of acceptance.
Yeah.
But I think that this is something that might come with time, and hopefully that attitude will be changing. So it is certainly, I think they are right-wing, but I don't think it's anything extremist.
Yeah.
And I also do appreciate the fact that they are a Christian government.
And unashamedly.
Unashamedly, exactly.
In the way over here in Britain,
you have to be ashamed of your religion.
We've got the Church of England, but we do have separation of church and state, and nevertheless the Queen is the head of the Church of England. We have this clever interrelationship between religion and politics, where we've reformed religion, and yet at the same time it's still there as part of our national structure. And that seems to me to be a good thing, not a bad thing, not something we should be ashamed of, even though so few of us go to church these days. I mean, I go to church Easter and Christmas, but I still consider myself a Christian, and I took my children to church regularly when I was bringing them up, because it's their culture, and I think it matters, the stories of the Bible. I mean, one of my beefs, here I am going off on one of my beefs about modern Britain is that we have the first generation in probably 1,000 years which is unfamiliar with the stories of the Bible. Every other child growing up in this country in Elizabeth's time, after Alfred the Great's time, would have been familiar with the Christian stories. It was part of their culture. And now, not. Suddenly, in a generation, it's been wiped out.
Definitely. And I mean, the government in Poland is still secular. There is separation between state and religion. Nevertheless, the MPs are very believing, and there is that strong connection between Christianity and the people who are representatives of the parliament. And I think that, as you said, this pride in religion and heritage and the achievements of the Western Christian culture is something that we should be proud of and we shouldn't be ashamed of.
Yeah.
No other culture is told to be ashamed of their achievements. And of course, one has to take a step back and recognize that all cultures committed atrocities that we don't want to repeat ever again, and that should be criticized. But nevertheless, I think that the general achievements of the West have just have been absolutely great and changed the world forever.
As Jim Morrison said, the West is the best.
Exactly.
And he was a philosopher. He's buried in Père Lachaise. Yeah, exactly. Now, look, there's loads and loads of stuff about the modern world that you can explain to me that I'm barely familiar with. For example, identarians. I hadn't even heard of identarians until Martin Selmayr and Brittany Pettibone were banned from coming into, and then suddenly I heard about this movement. Now, are identitarians good or bad? Or
see, that is a very difficult question because I am not an identitarian. I am a civic nationalist, so I believe that regardless of your skin color, especially as a Christian, I see all of us as one nation under God, and I think that regardless of your skin color, as long as you're willing to integrate properly and assimilate, I think that people can live together.
So tell me, just identitarians, or is it identitarians?
Identitarians.
Identitarians. Okay, identitarians. Right, it's a mouthful. They do think that skin color matters, among other things.
See, that is a very, very difficult question because they call themselves ethno-nationalists, and ethnicity doesn't necessarily have anything to do with race. It's ethnicity is defined something along the lines of belonging to a common traditional and cultural heritage, and what they believe in, from what I heard, is ethno-pluralism, and that is that every ethnicity, so all the people belonging to this common cultural and traditional heritage have a right to their homeland. So that's what has been explained to me, basically. And often you hear that, for example, how would you feel about if Japan all of a sudden became British? Or if Nigeria all of a sudden became British? It's like
Japan's quite a good example because Japan is and always has been fiercely xenophobic, fiercely protective of its cultural identity, and it's very hard to get residency there.
Absolutely, and you even see on like buildings, for example, only Japanese people allowed, or like no whites. Or
now, if any white country tried this, they would be excoriated, would they not, by the left liberal media, and even actually probably the kind of soft right media as well. It would be considered disgusting and disgraceful. When the Japanese do it, I mean, I look at the Japanese doing this and I think, actually, I respect the Japanese for protecting their culture, and I don't have a problem with it, because when I want to go to Japan, I want Japan to look like Japan, which is basically like Blade Runner, isn't it? I want to see neon signs, I want to see replicants, I want sushi, I want weird Japanese shit going down. I do not want McDonald's or anything white or European. I want Japan to be Japan, and I kind of want China to be China. No problem there. I think the Chinese are going to stay really, really Chinese, and so on and so forth. And yet, of course, when you talk about that with England or Poland, suddenly you're on much trickier territory, aren't you? And I look at a black English person, and I think they're exactly the same as a white English person in terms of their right to be here, and they're on the same team as me. I mean, well, the ones with the politics. But I judge them on their politics and their intelligence and their character,
exactly.
Not on anything else.
Exactly, and you see, this whole identitarian debate is really difficult because then you have the European New Right and you have the alt-right in America. The alt-right in America, who also call themselves identitarian, they want this thing called a white ethno-state, where they would basically
that's what they say.
Exactly, and it would be like a national socialist paradise in their mind. Whereas the European New Right, from what I've heard and some of the interviews that I had with them, because I also went as a journalist to live stream one of their conferences, because I wanted people to make up their own mind about what they think about it without any opinions whatsoever. I think that's important in journalism as well. So basically what this generation identity here in Europe seems to stand for is just simply preserving Christianity in Europe, and also borders and everybody's right to have their country, basically.
So actually quite reasonable things, not scary things.
That's exactly how they come across, and this is why I don't understand why there is so much criticism against them, because if I heard them...
You do know exactly why. It's because it's how the left rolls. They want to misrepresent. I mean, look at how anyone who is vaguely conservative and young, or young in spirit, is automatically called alt-right, because they know that alt-right is basically a code word for Nazi.
Yeah.
But so you've been to these, what are they called? The
It's New European Rights Generation Identity.
So you've been to their events, and you didn't get the impression that they were sort of like crop-headed.
I've only been to one event. It was this conference in Sevenoaks, and that was only because I was invited to live stream. And I thought, okay, so I want to be a journalist. How do I want to go about this? So there's already 1 million people on YouTube talking about their opinions, reacting to videos, reacting to liberals fail. How do I find a niche, and how can I be slightly different? And so I thought, all right, I have a lot of journalistic integrity. Why don't I let people make up their own mind about stuff that is going on around?
Right.
So I wanted to go to an Antifa conference. I wanted to talk to Antifa, but then they threatened me, so I can't go there. And when Generation Identity asked, oh, would you like to live stream? Simply come and live stream. And I thought, okay, fine. So I brought my phone, I brought a microphone, and I was, without any opinions, anything, I was just live streaming. And so that people could make up their own mind about what they stand for. And no, I never got the impression that it's something that is hardcore right. The only thing I heard them say that
set an alarm
exactly, was this great replacement that they talk about, and that is replacing white populations with third world populations. That is one of the things they're talking about, and this is why they're saying that there should be strong borders in Europe to prevent that. But I think that is very much a conspiracy theory, and I don't know if this is something that represents the movement in general. Perhaps it's just some people on the fringes who are saying these things.
Can you just explain briefly how the conspiracy theory works? What are they saying?
That basically, the European Union and a lot of institutions, NGOs, for example, have been bringing refugees across the Mediterranean.
Oh, it was a deliberate sort of Soros-inspired policy.
Well, somewhat.
Yeah, but to be fair, I wouldn't put anything past. George Soros is the most evil person in the world. I mean,
he is extremely evil, of course, but I just don't know if this is something that is like the general idea, or if this is something that's on the fringes of the movement. But I have to say that in regards to, for example, the LGBT community, I met people who are part of Generation Identity and worked in gay bars, for example. So I was thinking to myself, this is a movement that really doesn't discriminate and is certainly not as right-wing as they're being portrayed. Right,
okay. You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special, very interesting guest, Zuzanna Mroz. More in a moment.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Why did we see some of the Republican kissing of Mark Zuckerberg that was taking place?
I called it kissing the ring, because I felt like every single person practically had to kiss the ring of this guy, who wants to do nothing except get all those people out of office. So, bizarre behavior from the Republicans.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special and interesting guest, Zuzanna Mroz from Poland, who is studying at the London School of Economics, which is a hotbed of left-wing radicalism. And you're not on the left, you're on the right. You were at the March for Freedom, weren't you?
That's right.
And did I miss out? Because, I didn't go, and I'll be honest with you, Zuzanna. The reason I didn't go is I'm not going to turn up to an effing march if I'm not going to be one of the speakers. I'm not a civilian. I'm too big for that. And they should have asked me, and I might have said yes, but they didn't. And I like Tommy Robinson. I mean, did he organise it?
So basically the march was under Tommy Robinson's name, but it was primarily organized by his team. So Lucy Brown, Kaylin Robertson, and George.
Oh, I don't know them well enough. That'll be why then. Because I'll have to make friends with them. But I know that your friend and mine, Baz was tweeting out that it was kind of a waste of time. Did you not see that?
Maybe because he wasn't in the press area and he had to just walk around.
Do you not read his tweets?
No, I don't.
I thought he was one of your besties. Oh, well, anyway. Baz was tweeting out it was a waste of time because it didn't lead to anything, whereas you think it was a great success.
Oh, I think, perhaps maybe Baz wanted to get some footage of Antifa fighting, or he was just salty about not being allowed in the press area or backstage. I don't know, but
was he not?
No. There was very few of us.
That's so wrong.
But a lot of people weren't allowed in the press area.
Okay.
But regardless, so it was about 5,000 people who showed up. It was all over the media, of course. The event was painted as extremely far right by The Guardian. As
everything is far. You know, I've been called extreme right, far right, fascist,
neo-Nazi.
Just like, do we not have laws of defamation and libel in this country? I mean, how can they do that?
I mean, we do, but it's very difficult to win.
Is it?
I think it's only 20% of cases that win, and there's the public interest defense, and they can basically say that,
So what is the public interest in calling James Delingpole a fascist or extreme right, far right,
so
Nazi?
that people are aware of the dangerous ideas that you're propagating.
And that's what the court would argue?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought we were supposed to be such a soft touch for libel that we attracted libel tourists.
Yeah, so apparently there are a lot of cases that you can win, and so it's easier than in America, because in America it's extremely hard. You have these laws that stop you from even starting a case, but it's still not as easy as you would imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, going back to the March for Freedom, what was your favourite bit?
Milo Yiannopoulos' speech.
Oh, was he good?
That was quite entertaining. Yeah, I think all the speakers were great. I was very impressed with Count Dankula. He's a very intelligent man. He's the one who...
No, I'm going to have... Count Dankula has agreed to be on the podcast, although
Awesome.
he was a bit flaky. He was a bit kind of... he was worrying about getting his train... But I think he was quite nervous about the march, about his speech. He was putting a lot of effort into that. And then I think he wanted to get back to do some things in Glasgow, and I said, mate, look, if it's going to be a hassle for you, we'll do it another time, and maybe I'll even have to come up to Glasgow, which I've never done before, but you know, for Count Dankula,
of course,
maybe I would. I think people like Count Dankula and Paul Joseph Watson, they don't really get people like me, because I'm an older generation, I'm better educated, I'm more old school journalism, and they can't quite twig that actually, look, I'm one of them, really. It's just that I'm older and more seemingly establishment.
I think it's more... I don't think Count Dankula considers himself a journalist. He's a comedian, and a very successful one, and I genuinely think... He's a shit poster.
Well, that's my
I don't
ambition.
want to use that word. I don't know if you understood
that is my ambition.
It's
the highest calling, I think, these days.
I don't know. See, that's what I'm trying to avoid with everything I do, not to become a shit poster. I genuinely want to involve myself in...
no, you won't. You're not that kind of person.
I'm not that kind of person.
No.
Good. But basically, yeah, he's a shit poster, but he's a very intelligent man. When he was giving his speech, he used to be part of Antifa. And
did he?
Yeah, and he used to be a communist. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Exactly. And so what turned him away was the violence and everything. And so he is the least racist and the least... homophobic or transphobic person you can imagine. He comes across as a very, very warm, good person.
But by the way, look, I'm sorry, just pick you up on that.
Yeah.
None of us are those things.
Yeah.
None of us are transphobic,
absolutely.
Racist. I just find it tiresome the way we have to have this kind of self-protective thing. I mean, I know that at the March for Freedom you had a gay man, you had black people, you had every kind of gender under the whatever.
Drag queens that are now being fired from their job. Yeah, she's Vanity Van Glow, I think her name is. She's being fired by every single gay club she performed in because she participated in a far-right rally.
The intolerance of the left.
Of course. But it's funny because I remember reading that Guardian article where it's just called us Nazis, racist, and then this girl who was a black lesbian from Germany who came just for the event.
Yeah.
Sent a tweet underneath that post, and she said, I'm a black lesbian. I'm standing next to a gay couple. There is a man wearing a turban in front of me and two Indian girls behind me. This rally is multicultural as F. And I just thought to myself, exactly. There was so much diversity, so many people. The drag queen was performing, everyone was cheering, and so I really don't get the argument that we are far right.
And it was quite a young crowd, I gather.
But there was a diversity. There were, I think, being passionate about freedom of speech and liberty is not something that is intrinsic to any age or shouldn't be part of any political ideology.
But it is. Come on, look, we know this. It's an established fact. The millennials are over. The millennials are living in a gulag already. It's only your generation that's going to save us. So I imagine it was primarily Generation Z.
Well, Generation Z is only from 2001, I think. That's how you count it. So I was born in 1999, but you also have this test where you ask, do you remember 9/11? If you don't remember 9/11, then you're part of Generation Z. It's kind of complicated where you draw the line.
Oh,
so
right.
I was.
Oh, well, I think I'm broadening Generation Z then, because actually I'm thinking of certain people I know, not unrelated to me, who were. Oh, actually, no, 1998. That is Generation Z, or not?
No, it's supposed to be 2001, but if you don't remember.
Well, then I think I'm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, we're still closer, exactly, still closer to Generation Z than millennials, but it's hard to say because there was a lot of Football Lads Alliance people, so...
But that's all right.
Yeah, but of course they were quite older, so it was a mixed crowd at the end of the day. It was quite mixed.
I remember, this is just put a thought in my head. I was there at the birth of the acid house scene, the club scene, the thing that launched dance music, and I love telling the young about my youth. And I went to this club called the Wag. Love at the Wag was one of their, in my smiley T-shirt with my white cycling shorts with the Madonna on them, and my pirate bandana. And
I would love to see.
We were all. It was classic. I had hair in those days, and so we were all pilled up, and the drugs really were better in those days, obviously. And I remember going to the upstairs room where people would just kind of sort of chill out and kind of stroke one another's hair and tell each other how lovely they were. And I met quite a few lads who'd come from the football terraces who had previously been football hooligans, but had been converted by the drug and were suddenly into peace and love. I'm not sure what the analogy is exactly, because we're not talking about a drug here, but nevertheless, I'm just interested by Count Dankula's conversion from Antifa to, what would you call us, ANCAPs?
Oh, no, definitely not. More just moderate right, I think.
Okay, just freedom of speech.
Yeah, precisely.
But isn't ANCAP anarcho-capitalist? Isn't that kind of where the right is these days? The decent face of the right, of the groovy right.
I mean I feel like anarcho-capitalists are more, as you said, shit posters and Kekistanis and that sort of stuff. It's not really.
Do you not like?
I don't think
Pepe and Kek?
No, but it's a dead meme. I mean, that was during the election. So Pepe and Kek were very popular, and I mean, they're one of the reasons, this online sphere is one of the reasons why Trump won, and they were very successful at starting this whole new movement on the internet. But right now, it's a dead meme.
Tread lightly, for you tread on my memes. This is the problem, isn't it? And this is what my son is always telling me this. Dad, don't talk to me about memes. Do not. He absolutely hates it, and I can see why. Because the problem is that when we grown-ups chance upon, I mean, like, you are basically a kid, Zuzanna. When we grown-ups chance upon your memes, we normally come to the party about 18 months too late, by which time they are, as you say, dead memes. And so we try to be down with the kids, and every time we fail embarrassingly, probably epically, although probably I imagine the term epic fail is now itself a really dead phrase.
Well, yeah, but you see, to me, I discovered this whole thing through watching people like Lauren Southern, for example, and then through watching her and the videos that were linked to her, then Sargon of Akkad, and then this whole Kekistan project. So I think that if you exist in this online sphere more, then you would be more aware. But at the end of the day, I do think you're a very established journalist, and this online world is very different. So that's why perhaps maybe not your age so much, but also the sort of people you talk to and engage with. That is the reason why you're not on top of it. I
do know that Antifa really, really hate the Kekistan flag. And they hate all those memes and stuff. Why is that?
I mean, Antifa claims that it's based on some form of the Nazi flag. That's what the Kekistani flag is supposedly based on. But even if it was, I never really never really associated myself with Kyrgyzstan necessarily, but a lot of the people I met online were always very friendly and tolerant, and I think that perhaps it was just a joke in essence to kind of annoy Antifa and annoy the leftists. Something
Which is
along the
always a good
lines,
sport.
exactly, something along the lines of what Count Dankula did with his viral video.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned earlier something that rather shocked me, that university teachers are involved with Antifa.
Yeah, certainly. So it's basically the whole movement is organized by university professors. One of the men who was threatening me online and did this very, very pathetic, basically he tweeted out a photo of me with like a Nazi eye, and then
What does a Nazi
old
eye look
fascism,
like?
or
You
just
had
my eye
swastikas.
with like the swastikas,
Okay,
yeah. And then like blood around my mouth,
Yeah.
and it said something along the lines of like old fascism, new fascists, and they were talking about my address and stuff like that, and so. And then I actually
Well, he was
messaged him.
doxing you.
Well, he was trying to. And I messaged him. I said, why do you think that I am a fascist? When have I ever said anything remotely along the lines of fascism? And he was basically saying, oh, maybe it's not you, but the people you engage with, you are a breeding ground for fascism. And he actually said that I am a university professor. I know exactly what people like you are like, and also just in general talking to people on the right who used to be part of Black Lives Matter and part of Antifa who were converted. They were also saying that, yeah, basically it was my university professors. Even Count Dankula, when I had a private conversation with him, he said that it was his university professor who actually, or his teacher, or maybe his high school teacher he was, who brought him into Antifa in the first place.
When you think about some of the postgraduate degrees that these people have studied, things like zombie studies,
feminism studies,
feminism. I mean, do you not think that anyone who has studied gender studies or feminism
is crazy?
Is by definition a complete waste of intellectual space. I mean, I cannot see any argument at all for studying gender studies or feminism.
I suppose perhaps there is like. I mean, you could make an economic argument. There's going to be some people who will be interested in reading this. And I think that if you want to improve relationships or relation between women and men, it's important to understand better how women function, how men function.
Hello.
But
do you
that's
think
not what they
gender
do.
studies is doing?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's very difficult to justify. There are some things, like, for example, I have a university professor who taught me LSE 100. I respect her a lot. She has a PhD in feminist war studies, I think. It was essentially like...
not Joanna Burke, no.
No. It was essentially the role of women in war and war ethics from a feminist perspective. So there are some aspects of it that can be beneficial to society and understanding how society functions.
Right.
And I am a firm believer in equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcomes. So I think that we should be promoting women's rights so that they have a chance to go wherever they want in life if they're the best.
Yeah, once they've done the ironing.
Exactly.
But not until.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But yeah, I think that you could find an argument for some form of gender studies, but I think it can be very extreme, and often it's
you can
very
argue the
left-wing
case
people.
for anything if you thought long and hard enough about it. But I'm just trying to... Okay, so I suppose it is interesting that looking at war, traditionally a male hobby, from the women's perspective, and I suppose there are kind of subsets of martial culture like the Amazons and so on, and then I suppose you've got the kind of the fascinating gay element of Alexander the Great and all his team and Spartans and so on. But these are quite niche, aren't they? I'm just trying to think that what other uses there might be for gender studies. It just seems to me that they're basically divisive, and the same, by the way, for studies about race. They're divisive. They're not designed to make us get on better.
I think the problem is that a lot of what they teach, unfortunately, is teaching women to hate men.
Yeah.
And teaching people of color to hate white people, and then teaching white people to hate themselves. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that every culture, that as much as one has to recognize, if they're being honest, that there have been atrocities committed by empires. Absolutely every single race and every single culture has committed atrocities and genocides and murdered people and went to war, and it's not just something that is a white thing, but we are still being taught that white people are the most evil power on earth. What did Monroe Bergdorf say?
Well, actually, we're being taught this. You say it like this has been going on for some time. It hasn't. I'm very, very surprised. It's only in the last 10 years, I would say, that people have started saying that kind of thing in public, in kind of mainstream institutions.
I actually think that this is something that in universities has existed for quite a while. Perhaps not Oxford, as you say, but these American universities especially, and then it kind of immigrated to Europe. Because the socialist thought and this feminist thought and man-hating and white guilt isn't a new phenomenon. It's something that has been taught for a long time.
I know that it started this new wave, because I've one of my future podcast guests, Christopher Booker, has been researching a book on this. And when Peter Thiel was at Stanford, that was when they abandoned the Western civilization course that was a sort of standard module, and they adopted all this kind of anti-white, anti-Western civ stuff.
Exactly, and it's very sad because even when we're talking about integration and saying how regardless of your race we can still live together and work together and build beautiful societies, I think it's sad when the left is drawing these distinctions. Oh no, cultural appropriation, you're not allowed to do this, you're a colonizer, you're oppressing me, and they want safe spaces and they want to separate cultures. And you can either have cultures living together and learning from one another, or you can have separate spaces. And I just feel like people who fought for rights of people of color just turning in their graves and thinking to themselves, Jesus, what has become of my people?
Yeah.
Like, I have a dream that one day black and white kids will sit together at a school and learn together, and now they're saying that there should be safe spaces where only black people are allowed, and separate bathrooms and separate what not. I mean, we're going back to this complete insanity, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special and very interesting guest, Zuzanna Mroz.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
The real thing that the left is angry about is they're like, how could you allow these Russian memes? Somebody saw a meme and then they decided they had to vote for Trump. Or it must have been fake news. And by fake news, they mean conservative websites. Come on. But this is what the left thinks. Fake news. And by fake news, what they mean is shut down Breitbart.
Breitbart News Tonight. Weeknights starting at 9 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special guest, Zuzanna Mroz. Zuzanna, I sort of envy you being a kind of culture warrior in very exciting times. I mean, there's no doubt that the stakes are much higher now than they were when I was at university. And at the same time, I kind of feel rather sorry for you that I don't remember this culture of this climate of violence and extreme aggression that now prevails on campus. I don't remember anything analogous to Antifa.
Yeah.
These are really, really nasty people, and they seem to glory in violence. There was no I suppose there was sort of anti-fascist and anti-racist, but they didn't define themselves as this kind of aggressive institution.
Yeah, precisely. It's I feel like it's been getting worse and worse over time. A while back, when I went to that Generation Identity conference to record what was happening,
yeah,
Antifa started calling the center where they held their conference, saying that these people are vile racists, that they're fascist Nazis. They put out the center's number out on the internet, saying that you have to kick them out, and they did, and they stopped the conference, they stormed the stage, they threw everyone out, and then everyone was very confused. I was trying to do some interviews, and then we started walking towards a parking lot so that we could continue, or so that they could continue talking there. And basically what happened is that Antifa showed up, they started to attack people. They had women that went in front just attacking men, and on the conservative side, the men didn't hit the women. But my friend Lucy Brown, for example, she had a whole fist of hair pulled out from her head.
Did she?
Yeah, they are very, very attacked. And same a while back when she went with Tommy and other camera people to an Antifa fighting session, because they're basically trained to fight, and they taught MMA and making explosives and stuff like that. They went to record that, and basically they got attacked as well, and that was all over the alternative media. They were on InfoWars with Alex Jones and stuff. She was also attacked. She was kicked in the head. She was thrown to the ground, and she's a girl. She's like 5'7".
Okay. So we have this. I worry about policing in this country. We have a culture now where if you say something cheeky on Twitter, you can now be threatened with prison, and the police will pursue you with the full force of the law, and they will put officers on your case and get you pursue you through the courts. And yet, if you tear a chunk of hair out of a girl who's 5'7", just because she's got different political views from you won't get touched.
Well, the worst thing is that she even says on camera, "I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you." And she's that woman still goes for her, and she holds onto her hair, and it's all recorded. And these like 3-4 men had to pull her off. And they cover their faces. When they cover their faces, they're obviously going to be aggressive. That's the whole point of covering your face. If you didn't want to go and fight, you wouldn't conceal your identity. And so all that we truly have to rely on is 4chan, for example. It's as you said.
Yeah, 4chan, the autistic kids.
Pakistanis, exactly, and people who basically do research, and then they look at shoes of these people and hair color and the masks that they wear, and they basically try to trace them. And we managed to find the address of that woman, and basically she was reported to the police for what she did. But a lot of those things are done through the help of the internet community, who are just absolutely enraged with what is happening.
So they have tracked down the girl who did that?
Yes, yeah, they did, and
what do we know about her? What was the background?
Basically, she has loads of mental issues. She used to target Tommy Robinson a lot as well. It's a lot of these people that Antifa works with are those who are outcasts in the society. They have no friends.
So just like ISIS.
Exactly. They give a sense of community. They take people with mental issues. They even take people off the street. So they say, we're going to feed you, we're going to give you a place to sleep, but you're going to join Antifa. And these people do it because they're desperate.
That's interesting. I've
they have no moral or ethical grounds at all.
Over the years, I've noticed that a lot of the really nastiest, aggressive behaviour I get on Twitter comes from people. You sort of read up about who they are, and quite a lot of them are nursing grievances to do with often physical or mental health. They've got a sort of a twibbon that tells you that they've got mental health. They're a survivor of mental disability, or they've got something like ME, something that's kind of ruined their life and made them bitter, or they've got a physical disability, and you feel sad for them because you know where it's coming from. But at the same time, you think, actually, why do you have to make your problem everybody's problem?
And this is not something that just happens with people with disabilities. It's the same with the LGBT community and people of color and people who are disabled. It's everywhere. This victimhood mentality. We have a society that now promotes being a victimhood Olympics, where the more oppressed you are, the better. So I'm black, I'm Muslim, I'm disabled, trans, and gay, and whatever else. So you need to stop talking and listen to me. Or men will be silenced in a conversation because a woman will say, "No, listen to me because I'm a woman. You're oppressing me. You're a white cis male." Yeah. So it's absolutely insane.
I recently had a run-in with some people from Wales. I was thinking, you guys, you're white, you live in a culture where you've got more or less freedom of expression. You've got a welfare state which cushions you. You've pretty much got it made. You won the lottery in life. You live in a beautiful country. And the one straw of victimhood you pathetic people are clutching at is that you're Welsh and that somehow you're being discriminated against because you've got this language which is clinging on by the skin of its teeth. It's pathetic. You're absolutely right. There is the victimhood Olympics.
And it's one thing when it's just extending to everything, as you said. One thing was, for example, people of color. You can understand historically they've been greatly oppressed.
You sort of can, except that girl.
It's not them anymore.
That girl, is it Afua Hirsch, who's been absolutely adored by The Guardian and the BBC, and she's written this book about how incredibly oppressed. And you look at her; she's a beautiful girl. She's got lovely coffee-coloured skin. She's attractive. She's well-spoken. She's well-educated. I can't really see. No, we're all pretty cool about race and sex and gender and the rest these days. I think a lot of this stuff is manufactured.
Oh, absolutely, and it's just manufactured for selling. And also, I remember a while back there was this man called nicknamed Black Hitler. And he was going around saying that white people have to pay him reparations. And there's basically a video of him saying,
in
you owe me reparations. No, in America.
Oh, right, okay.
And you owe me reparations, and you owe me reparations, and you owe me... And people would pay him reparations. He would just have this bunch of people following him.
There was also the black comedian who went into the...
Starbucks,
and demanded a free coffee.
Oh, that was great. I mean, use the system by all means, but it's completely ridiculous. But there's other things like I, for example, strongly oppose positive discrimination or... for example...
So do I.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we're being told that all the boys and men and white people have it so much easier, where statistically it's really not true. More people of color go to universities than white people. Women are accepted, for example, in America to STEM subjects 2-to-1 because the university have a quota that they have to fill in.
Even though they will drop out anyway because it's their brains aren't designed for it. I mean... Sorry, call me old school sexist, but I am. But I just think I'm all up for people studying whatever they want and whatever they're capable of. But
if they're capable of it,
but
exactly.
Don't encourage them to do stuff just because STEM subjects. I mean, I'm bloody glad I didn't do STEM. Not that my brain would have been. I've got a girl's brain, obviously, because I did an art subject, and that's fine. I was really good at it, and it taught me critical thinking, which a lot of people who've done STEM subjects, I mean, A, they're pretty illiterate, and B, they've got no critical thinking. They just think like automatons, and that's good if you want to be in a lab designing, I don't know, magic potions. See how much I know about STEM subjects.
Precisely. No, but I think that we're just decreasing standards in a lot of ways in order to fit into this PC culture and identity politics culture. So, for example, now in America, if you want to be a soldier, they're removing the grenade throwing exercise because women couldn't do it.
Because girls can't throw. It's one of my favorite factoids.
And it's really, really upsetting because, I mean, if you're a woman and you want to be in the army, by all means be in the army, but you have to be able to throw. You have to be able to be as good as the men who are going to engaged in the military.
I agree. And look, since we're on this particular theme, whatever happened to first principles? What is the military for? The military is there for defence of the realm. How do you best defend the realm? Do you do it by recruiting these badass killers to go and kill your enemies for you, or do you try and make your army more gender balanced by getting girls? I mean, girls are there for nursing and stuff, aren't they? For all that tenderness and things that girls are good at.
I mean, I suppose primarily that's and historically, but I as I said, I'm all about, and I think so are you, but you're, of course, a shit poster, as you said. I think that, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. So as I said, if women are good enough, then by all means,
if they can throw that grenade.
Exactly.
And if they can carry a 15-stone man, I don't know what it is in pounds, across a battlefield, then that's good. Otherwise, we know that women can make very good terrorists, really good terrorists, and we know that they've made very good SOE operatives in the war. They have their fingernails torn out and still they don't blab. I mean, girls are fantastic, but you don't want them as kind of frontline combat troops, I would say.
I mean, I suppose, again, if they're good enough, then by all means.
Well,
but very few women will be.
The YPG, whatever they're called, the girls' outfit, and in the Israeli armed forces. But I think even the Israelis do not use women on the front line generally.
I have absolutely no clue, but I know that Israel is very inclusive in what they're doing, but that is, part of the culture and part of the training. So they have programs for all sorts of, they have programs for women and men and LGBT people, because it's obviously, people don't have a choice. You have to participate in the army.
Do you know,
but if they're at the front, I have no clue.
Whenever the mention of Israel comes up, I always I start to swoon. I just so love Israel. I just think they're so sound.
Yeah, no, I also am very passionate about Israel, and I do think it has a right to exist by all means, but that is a very controversial thought. I remember a while back I was doing a conservative campaign with Sebastian and some other people on campus to promote conservative thought at LSE, and we were shut down, of course, by this non-binary person who got offended that we said, are there 72 or 2 genders? But regardless, there was an Israeli group. They came all the way from Israel to speak at LSE and King's College.
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed. So basically, they were kicked out of King's College.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed in at all. They
Yeah.
were thrown out. And then when they came to LSE, they were told they're not going to be allowed to speak. And so I took them outside and I just live streamed them. And the live stream got about 50, 60,000 views. So obviously, they still got a much larger audience than they would have. But it's just really sad how clearly pro-Palestine the academic community is.
Yes.
And now you're even talking about like Jewish privilege, the Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, the Jews who suffered so greatly throughout all these centuries. So yeah.
That's when you know that you've reached peak stupid, where the victims of the Holocaust are suddenly privileged. Yeah, exactly.
And I feel that the extreme right and the extreme left have one thing in common, and they're both very much about identity politics. Both hate the Jews, both want races separated. It's
But actually, Zuzanna, this is one of the very few areas where I disagree with you. I don't buy into this idea that the far right, that fascism or Nazism are far right. They're just communists with better uniforms. They are left. This is what Hayek essentially argues in The Road to Serfdom. He distinguishes between free markets and sort of government intervention. That's what it's all about. It's just the extremity of government intervention.
Well, perhaps. Well, yeah, perhaps. But I think that also in terms of being accommodating to like racial diversity and the LGBT community, you don't find that in Nazism. You find this in very far left communists.
I think the Nazis were all closet gays, basically. You only have to look at the uniforms and stuff. They're all, and look what was going on in Weimar before. The Nazis were just uptight closet gays.
Okay.
Do you think?
I don't know if
Maybe.
you're being serious, so.
Well, I probably am. Yeah, I think I am. Yeah. Anyway, I would love to continue this conversation, and we're going to, Zuzanna, we're going to.
Oh, we absolutely are.
We have got the Big Reveal podcast on another occasion.
Yeah.
It's been really good talking to you, and
likewise,
and well done for fighting the fight for the. You do it for the kids. You go and take on Antifa and brave
it's
that
a pleasure.
stuff. Okay.
It's a pleasure.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special guest, Zuzanna Mroz. Thank you and goodbye.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.